So, hi everyone, welcome back to our podcast. I'm excited to have Sarah with us here. We have had a lot of conversation off the counter, and I'm so glad that we're having this in a more not formal setting, but in a longer session. So, but before that, let me introduce Sarah to you guys if you've not seen her on our socials or within the shop. So, Sarah is an American British urbanist, strategist, and writer, and the founding director of Desire Lines, a cross-disciplinary practice guiding the transformation of places, communities, and organizations towards thriving future. Based in Singapore, she is a leading voice in regenerative design and urban planning. Her co-authored book, Flourish, Design Paradigms of Our Planetary Emergency, has been called the one book to read to understand your industry by the Financial Times. Sarah is a World City Summit Young Leader alumna and an honorary fellow of the Royal Institute of British Architects. Her work challenges us to think about design and development in a new way, integrating indigenous knowledge and learning from a nature of creative, thriving communities for the future. So glad to join us here.
Thanks, Ray. I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you. So before we start, can you tell us more of what you're wearing and the thought process of why you choose that today?
But of course, well, if I'm going to have a conversation with you, I definitely need to think about what I'm wearing, right? From both a style and substance perspective, which I was happy to do. I am wearing a modified kimono from one of your Circular Fashion Hub tenants, Sign, I think. Is that you
Sign.
So Sign take archival kimonos from Japan and then rework them. And in this case, I'd gotten it from the Circular Fashion Hub maybe a year or two ago.
Right.
And I just found I wasn't wearing it that much. It's like a gorgeous piece. I was happy to see
love
every
the
time it cost it.
colors.
Thank you. But I realized that for our tropical climate and for a work context, losing the traditional long sleeves was the move. So I've recently had it modified, so it's a little bit more tropical friendly. And then I'm wearing a bodysuit by Perk by Kate, which is a female-owned, a beautiful kind of intimate bodywear company based here in Singapore. They everything's small batch, ethically manufactured, Ecotech certified. I think if we can't get things secondhand, we should try to buy quality and from ethical suppliers.
Love that.
And then the trousers are Stella McCartney, but they're from a consignment shop in Melbourne where I had a fellowship last year. And
nice.
the consignment shop is called Swap. So I thought it was maybe appropriate for
amazing.
for
You
today.
look good. I
Thank
love
you.
the orange on you.
Thank you.
Cool. Okay, so going back to your early years, what was fashion to you, and how did it evolve along the way?
So I grew up in California in the San Francisco Bay Area in a pretty hippie household. And I don't think I even thought of the word fashion until I was a teenager. But I certainly felt supported to be creative in how I dressed. My parents had amazing clothes, a lot of which they'd made themselves or which they'd gotten vintage. That was very much of their era. So I always felt really supported to express myself through clothing, but I never thought about it as fashion until maybe like junior high-ish, early high school years, where I discovered the wonderful world of magazines. This was the amazing era of kind of on one side of the Atlantic, you had people like Liz Tilberis editing Harper's Bazaar, this like legendary editorial period. And then on the other side of the Atlantic, maybe edgier things like The Face, people like Corinne Day, shooting talent like Kate Moss, and just the combination of those two things, and maybe understanding that there was this whole intentional industry around like designing designing, making, and putting together what people wore as a broader, more intentional way of being in the world was like a complete revelation. And I was really wrapped up in it for a while.
Cool. So that sounds very interesting. A lot of influences that you have growing up. And when did you realize that you were finding your style? Or has there been that moment of like you being like, okay, I love the way the things that I chose that I wear? Or
So it's funny. I think with our own style, in relation to our context, we sometimes don't understand it until we switch contexts.
right.
If that makes sense. Or like we don't think about our style, at least I didn't think about my own style until I moved to a context where that was no longer normal. So for me, when I went back east to Connecticut for college and was suddenly surrounded by pretty bland, preppy style. Okay, can I share? You know, right now there's this big thing around Ivy League style.
Right, yes. Ralph Lauren kind of vibe.
Yeah, I feel like that's sort of this fantasy that's been created by the fashion industry, and the actual experience of being on campus was unfortunately a lot less.
Tell us more about that experience.
Well, I don't know, maybe it's completely changed now, but I think growing up in a context where I felt really comfortable and encouraged to wear what I wanted and try different things and upcycle vintage, to a context where the driving force on campus seemed to be like to fit in and to conform and to sort of wear a uniform of sorts, which at least at the time was pretty standard, was kind of a rude awakening, I'd say. And so I felt a huge period of identity crisis, actually, if I'm completely honest there, of just like being at a place where individuality was not necessarily celebrated, was not necessarily something to aspire to. And then switching contexts again, you know, having the chance to study abroad in France and then having the chance to go work in New York City and then go work in London, switching contexts to places where individuality was more embraced and celebrated again felt like this huge moment of relief. And I suppose the self-expression has evolved with each of those changes of context.
Right. Yeah. Because you've been around different cities that you've been living in, right? So you having mentioned that individuality is something that is important to you and realizing your style after you've moved to a different place.
For sure. And I guess to make clear, for me, it's not so much about like me, Sarah, being able to express my individuality. It's more, I feel really energized when I'm in a context where everyone feels that way,
right?
Where everyone feels safe to be themselves, feels excited about expressing themselves in their full beauty and kind of their full spectrum of identity. And so places like a New York or a London allowed that.
Was there also a moment, because I would assume that it has been also not challenging, because you've been into different places with different styles and different ways on how they celebrate fashion or what they say fashion is. Was there like a bit of confusion that you have of like changing from different cities and then adapting to new things on what fashion is to that specific place?
Oh, that's such a great question. I'm sure you've got a good answer to that too. Your own experience living and working in different contexts. I think it's kind of like learning a new language or learning a new dialect. It's fun to sort of make mistakes as you learn.
Yeah.
And like the only way you learn is by trying and making mistakes and understanding there are different codes and different, say in a professional context, what is considered work appropriate at a real estate developer's office in London is probably very different than what is appropriate when you're having a meeting with an art gallerist in Sao Paulo, in Brazil, and like understanding, I guess, the importance of self-presentation and the mutual respect as one like learns to play with codes, obviously without like making it the first thing you're thinking about, right? Correct. You want to be thinking about other things than just what everyone's wearing. But it's there, right? Yeah. We're social creatures and we do interact with each other, partly on the basis of how we present physically, and clothing is a big part of that.
Yeah. So having said that, so whenever you have like events or in a daily basis, do you think of like, I'm going to wear this because, or what's like your thought process that you go through every day? Or like specific big moments, I would say.
Okay, so let's be real. On a day-to-day basis, I've got 2 primary school aged kids who I love, and I'm running a business.
Yes.
So let's say it would be aspirational for me to get to a point where every morning I could give the amount of thought that I perhaps have to come and have a conversation with you, Ray. Yeah, that's on my mood board. But for big events, part of my work as an author and a strategist and an advocate for regenerative design and development does involve public speaking. So I'd say at those peak events where I think particularly in a keynote context when you're the only person on stage, it's so important that you're respectful of your audience, and like kind of part of public speaking is making it enjoyable and accessible for your audience, and that might change hugely again depending on is it an art audience, is it a group of structural engineers, is it a group of politicians, what continent is one on, what season is it? So I'd say for those. And I've gotten a lot of my favorite keynote dresses from you at TFP. So those are that's where I'm really able to have the luxury of putting care and thought into it.
Okay, so after all those years that you have acquired of like trying to figure out what it is that fashion is to you, what could be like your top 3 or things that you would feel like the purpose of fashion to you?
Oh gosh. I guess so much of the way that I think about the world is in relationship. So a lot about fashion for me is about building relationships, whether it's in terms of like navigating those different cultural codes we were talking about earlier, or I guess increasingly it's important for me to feel that I have some sort of relationship, even if it's like a parasocial relationship with, like I'm not best mates with Stella McCartney, but I admire what she's done. I really admire what she's done in terms of moving the needle on sustainability best practices in fashion and within her part of the market, or relationships with people like Kate Lowe, the founder of Perk by Kate, who I think is doing really amazing things about building community and building knowledge around what goes into making her line. So I'm not sure if I've answered your question exactly, but I think for me right now, it's really about relationships. So relationship to context, relationship to the people who've designed and made the clothes.
I love that.
And then also, you know what, for me, I love people watching. So part of fashion for me is just like deep appreciation for when you see something, you know, like here in Singapore, particularly, I find like some of the ladies, maybe over 70, there's like this amazing style of some of these, you know, like the two-piece things or amazing jade or like amazing hair. That's recently become an area where like I love watching people's choices.
Yeah, I mean, to share with you as well, I love that. Like whenever I'm walking anywhere, so that's always been my attention is focused on people watching, and like seeing people like dress up really. And sometimes in my head, it was like she should swap, she should be part of the community because I imagine she would have like a very nice wardrobe.
Yeah.
So that's like also I feel you when you share that.
Yeah.
So, you've mentioned about sustainability, and I'm sure 10 years ago, sustainability was not something that was talked about in the fashion industry. It was more of like the desire of owning more and being fashionable and being trendy. So, after having that awareness of our love for fashion, or like just without the thought of like buying something is affecting the people, especially that you've mentioned relationship is something that is important in fashion and to the planet and to your work as well. So has it changed the way you see fashion for what it is before and now?
It's interesting. I feel like in some ways, the best parts of sustainability, or even one step on from sustainability, what I would advocate for, like regenerative culture, is rediscovering older forms of wisdom. And I think that for me, the idea, for example, of making sure that the garments that you buy are well made and will stand up to being altered, like do they have enough hems in them that they can be altered? Are they going to last a long time? Could you pass them down or swap them in to give them a new life with someone else? For shoes, for example, like I always look for shoes, even trainers, that can be resold.
Right.
And that's, for a long time would have been how just like the standard for shoes, right? So in a way, it feels like coming back to an earlier understanding where I was mostly just wearing vintage or mostly wearing things that my parents had made or modified. Or wearing things from Army surplus, which are made to last and built well. But I think more broadly, like speaking more broadly about the culture and having young daughters who are starting to get a sense of themselves and how clothes are part of how they are in the world. I still feel that there's so much work to be done. So thank goodness for people like you in the community that you're building. I definitely don't think we're there yet, where we can look back on it like, oh, in the bad old times.
We're still in the battle.
We're still in the thick of it, and we're still at a time where the work that you and your collaborators do is so important and deserves all of our support, because there is this potential. You can see the potential of something better. And some of it's already with us, right? The future is here. It's just unevenly distributed. But the more of us who can take part and support and enjoy these alternative ways of doing things, the sooner we can get to the other side of this nightmare that is like mass fossil fuel throwaway culture around fashion and so many other aspects of design. One area where I still feel really challenged to feel fully confident in my clothes choices is when it comes to athletic wear. shapewear, and intimates, that I think all three of those things, in order to like get the stretch that you want, are still so dependent on synthetics.
Yeah.
So even if like I'm gonna save up my money and shell out on some like Patagonia,
Yeah.
they're recycled, they're made to the highest standard of ethics. Their profits all go to support climate action, but it's still made from polyester.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's still contributing to like all the health and environmental challenges we know about now. I think that's one area where I'm really hoping we're going to see some sort of technological innovations coming through that can be accessible.
I love that. Yes, whoever they are, please make it happen.
Yeah, please make it.
I guess like your background has really emphasizing the quality and being thoughtful and purposeful in acquiring things. What are your thoughts of, I think not just fashion, but mostly everything, like what you've mentioned, has become like super accessible and super affordable. What are your thoughts on that? And like with your two girls, how would you balance that kind of your upbringing at the same time what the world is offering?
For sure. So I feel like the fast fashion industry has really pulled one on us collectively in terms of, and actually so much of degenerative culture has pulled this fast one on us of, see what I've done there, fast fashion. They pulled a fast one on us. Mom jokes. That they've somehow convinced us that they are making things more accessible, or they're democratizing things by providing these cheap throwaway items, when actually there is so much that is already accessible and affordably priced. If we think about shopping secondhand, there's so many amazing online platforms now where you can get incredible items, well-made items for less, as long as you're happy that they're pre-loved. Think about in Singapore or across Southeast Asia, there's this amazing network of seamstresses and tailors who are skilled, can affordably modify things, customize things. We can work with them on that. So I think there's this bit of this myth around accessibility, actually, and that's what I'm trying to help my girls understand without being a complete dictator about the choices that they make, but encouraging them to think like, oh, do you see something at the swap shop that maybe it's not the right size for you, but can we alter it to be the right size? Or if something needs to be mended, I'm that mom who like mends their things. Can we put some amazing patch on it, which actually makes you like proud to wear it because it has something that feels more like yours and different. And I'm so grateful again to my parents for having set that model. And sorry, I'm not trying to be like I'm the ideal at this at all, but I think all of us have a part to play in our own lives and then thinking about the next generation.
I really love that. It's such a good point. I've never realized that, because growing up and seeing fast fashion, it feels like, my God, I have the access, I have the means to be part of that conversation or to be part of a trend, and also not knowing that there is that part of accessibility that already exists, that it doesn't have to be fast fashion. So I love that.
Yeah.
So you've mentioned secondhand and being in Asia and also part Asian. Has there been a moment where, because I know even up until now, there's still a bit of a stigma to that. Has there been a moment of that where you felt like, secondhand is not cool or something that you would avoid to shop?
So I think we need a new category of jobs. So one of the things I love about what you're doing here and just the overall potential for building regenerative communities and businesses is the creation of new forms of right livelihoods. I'm going to come back to your question, I promise you.
No worries.
So I think we need a new category of job for an Asian market which is like a geomancer for used things, or a someone who can cleanse the energy.
The energy, okay.
Of old things. So people lose the superstitious feeling of only wanting the new because they're worried about what the old might carry with it.
Right.
So like an energetic cleanser. Just throwing it out there. I think it really comes down to stock and availability. So, for example, if you shop vintage in Japan, there's such a culture of people buying for quality and people maintaining things well that you kind of know what you're going to get there is going to be high quality. I think one of the challenges we run into maybe in Southeast Asia, particularly with the climate, is that like everything can degrade. We're constantly fighting the humidity. So like all of my books here, a lot of my works of art have gotten foxed or moldy. And I think the same with clothes, right?
Yeah.
They can degrade a lot more quickly. So that's another contextual challenge we have to deal with. But I feel confident that there's nothing inherent to the region that should prevent us from understanding. Just one great example would be thinking about a gold jewelry here, right? And how so many families across Asian cultures have a tradition of having, like, either passing down gold jewelry or having it remelted and remade. And I think if we could think about clothes more broadly within that context of like it's a treasure to be passed down, but it can also be refashioned or remade to the times, that we've got a great ground to build from, to grow from.
Right, cool. So it's been 5 years that you've been swapping with us?
You would know better than I.
Something like that.
Yeah.
So what has been changed with the relationship that you have with fashion since you've started swapping? Or like, how did you even came across about what we're doing?
I can't remember how I came across it, but it came at such a wonderful time for me because I was emerging from this very strange transitional time of having moved climates, having changed jobs, having become a parent, like all of these things happening at once, which meant that everything that I'd brought from my past life, or so much that I brought from my past life, just wasn't, including my clothes, just like sometimes literally wasn't a fit anymore, or it wasn't appropriate. You know, what might have looked great in a boardroom in London just didn't work on a site visit in the tropics in Singapore. And I think a lot of parents listening or watching might empathize with, you do go through this period when you have little kids where you're like mostly just wearing things for comfort and like what won't show stains. So I think when I first came to TFP, I was looking for new options. And I was so happy. Like, what I love about swapping is that it's really like a low risk way to try radically different things if you want to. Because I used to, as someone who cares even too much about the provenance of things, I pre-swapping would have probably spent way too much time thinking, am I going to wear this for the next 10 years? You know, like, am I ready to commit to this thing?
Right.
Whereas here, it's like, oh, I see that. It looks exciting. It seems like a fun match for whatever activity I've got, the wedding that I've got planned coming up. I'll just swap it out and try. And if it's a perfect match, then it becomes, like a forever friend. And if it's not, that it can come back here and it can join someone else's life and be part of someone else's adventure.
Yeah, that's true. Love that. So, from or memorable moments that you had from the pieces that you got from the swap shop.
There's one really beautiful, I've recently swapped it back in, actually. I hope someone else has found it and enjoyed it, but this really beautiful sort of 80s vibe, layered light pink ruffled
Oh my God, yes,
dress.
I remember that. And
Yes.
someone swapped it.
Oh, I'm so happy. I hope you're enjoying it. Which I swapped out for a family wedding in the English countryside several summers ago. And it was just that perfect example of nothing about it matched my life here in Singapore, running a business, being a parent. But it was like the perfect thing for that context. And I felt so beautiful when I wore it. And I think I danced all night in that dress. But another thing I love actually about swapping and vintage and consignment is that if you look at the cycles of fashion right now, so much of it is archivally inspired, right?
Always inspired from the past.
Right? It's always inspired from the past. So actually, there's a huge advantage in places like Fashion Pulpit where you have this like depth of pieces which someone might be swapping in. I've seen like suits here that are like made in Italy, made in Paris, probably like 50 or 60 years ago.
Honestly.
Or it might be someone's mom's cheongsam alongside like something that just came out last year. But being able to have that depth of references actually makes you really flexible and ready if you care about being on trend. So for example, I think that summer I swapped it out. Ruffles were big. But it might have been from the first time ruffles were big. Yeah. OG.
The OG dress. Cool. So effective, because I think we're coming to an end. We're running out of time. Gaining all this perspective and the experiences that you have with swapping and knowing what is fashion is now, like the things that we have to deal with. I think it's definitely the problems of fashion was definitely happening way before we have this sustainability and the negative impacts. It was already happening. And knowing that there are businesses that you've been supporting that are doing their best to at least somehow provide a solution, maybe not the best solution, but at least it is something. And moving forward, how do you think or as yourself, like how are you being more conscious with the choices that you have when it comes to picking things that you would want to wear, and also for your daughter, because I've seen them a few times.
I know, you've seen them running around wreaking havoc in the changing room. Sorry, if they bothered you. I do love them though. There's always room for improvement, but I personally feel pretty good about it right now. And I think so much of change is about changing together. And if there's something that we don't like, or if there's something that we aspire to, just trying to deal with it as an individual is going to probably prove very hard, very frustrating, maybe impossible. But when we're doing things together and building community and making it fun, like all the workshops that you run here, and that's where I feel the strongest sense of hope is in kind of building community, which then grows from relationships like this to relationships like this to, to becoming an irresistible movement that certainly gives me hope. And I think the other thing that gives me hope and why I love your space here in Jalan-Besar so much is public space has always been a really important part of my work and the way I think about the world. And whilst I love so many things about the digital world, I mean, it's allowing us to have this conversation and then share it with others. Yeah. There's so many hugely positive things about online life and the digital revolution. But I do think there is something about being in space together in person, and even in some instances, the way that you've built, you're beginning to build community beyond the walls of your own business, like with the broader city, that's really how you can, in a very tangible way, see and feel and live the desired change. So that's where I see room for hope in my own life and for the world generally.
Cool. My God, thank you so much, Sarah, for those perspectives and stories that you've shared. So lastly, if anyone who is interested after they have heard this podcast, where can they find you?
Sure. The easiest way is to just go to either, for my business, you can go to desire-lines.com. You can find us there, reach out to us there. Or for me personally, I've got links to all of my socials as well as some of my work if you want to find out more at sarahichioka.com, which I guess we can put in the show notes.
Yeah.
Sometimes not everyone can spell my surname easily. But yeah.
Again, thank you so much, Sarah, for your time and sharing your stories with us. And I'll see you around.
Yeah, thanks, Ray.